This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for the Intentionality Gurus with Candace Pollock. Our subject today is 4 ways of being. So, to be honest with you, I thought just the one way that I do it was enough.
Well, and it certainly is.
Oh, okay.
And nobody's saying it has to be one way or the other. It's just opening up opportunities to see other ways, other potential paths there. So
Okay.
it's always with the intentionality gurus, plumbing the depths of all the stuff that kind of drives a lot of our thinking and behaviors and feelings, and then having a choice about which path you'll take.
Okay.
Everybody's path is unique to them.
All right.
Alrighty. So the last time we talked about above the line and below the line, and the things that we talked about then and today, and my plan is to continue to explore this material, comes from the book, The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And it was written by Dethmer, Chapman, and Klemp. It's a real meaty book, and it's intended, leadership in business and other endeavors, perhaps, but it's also about living, how we lead our lives,
Okay.
In our decisions. So just to recap from the last podcast, we talked about 2 normal states. So we're either above the line or below the line. Below the line is we're closed off, we're defensive, and we're coming from a position of having to be right. Where above the line, we're open and curious and interested in learning. Right. Even if we don't like the outcome, we're open to at least seeing it. Other ways of being. Alrighty. So the next element that they cover in the book as a prelude to the rest of the things we'll be exploring for a little bit are these states of being. And basically, it's the idea that there are ways that we approach our thinking that then colors how we react.
Okay.
And some of the choices we make, in the moment or otherwise. Right? And some of this may sound familiar, but the reason I liked the book, somebody recommended it to me. The reason I liked it was because it did shift thinking in a great way. So the 4 ways are to me, by me, through me, as me. And that doesn't make any sense now. But so today we're just kind of delving into the state of being of to me.
Okay.
Okay. So am I making any sense?
Yep.
Or does it sound oblique so far?
No,
okay.
So far it sounds good.
Okay. So the idea when we have a mindset or a sense of our experience of our daily existence of life happening to us, to me, we're coming from a position that's either colored by our past experiences or informed by our imagination, what it may happen in the future, not necessarily in a good way, maybe a sense of trepidation and so on. And basically, the authors are telling us that we can be aware of the to me way of thinking because if we can heighten our consciousness around that, then we can see where we are self-limiting.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So the main perspective in the to me thinking is that life is happening to me. Life is happening to us. And underlying sense of that there's something wrong, not the way things should be. And, but I was trying to think of some examples for the purposes of this podcast. And that would be the classic, being on a highway or in traffic and getting stuck like it should be otherwise.
Right.
Do you follow?
Yep, I do.
And the idea then is there's somebody to blame or something outside of us where there's something to blame or somebody needs to fix it. It should be different. And all these external forces are what's triggering everything. And the tip-off phrases that we'd be saying, you might be a redneck if, you might be a as-me thinker when you're saying, like, if only such and such, or, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why does this always happen to me?
Right.
kind of thinking. So any instances you can think of where you've observed that in other people or maybe even in yourself?
Well,
My little guinea pig.
it's a great conversation that we're having today because we've discussed some of these ideas on some other shows this past week about, taking care of ourselves. And to take care of yourself sometimes means to, empty out all those old tapes, those old questions like, why me? So, for instance, the other day I had somebody who I've been working with for a very long time trying to get their podcast up. And I got a call from a friend of hers, not her, but a friend of hers who said, oh, she's decided to go in another direction. And when I got off the phone, my first reaction was, why me? What did I do? And talk about taking myself below the line. I was really beating myself up. It must have been something I said. I went back and I read some of the emails I sent and just like totally devastated myself until I was worn out and I thought, well, you know what? That's okay. I've been working on this for 6 months. Let's just throw it in the garbage, basically. I don't have to think about this anymore. And it made me feel so good that I could finally do that. But I had to go get all the way below that line, just degrading myself and degrading the person, not to their face and not to anybody else, but, just thinking that they were the worst person in the whole world. And by the time I finished all that, it was like, you know what, that's fine. This probably wasn't the right decision anyways for me, so I can move on.
Well, and a key element is you noticed it.
Yes, yeah. But I had to get way down. I mean, my
yeah.
family wouldn't even get near me because they could just see the steam coming out of my eyes and ears, and they knew not to even ask. And, that's a good thing that we've learned around here as well. When somebody looks that annoyed, unless they want to tell you what they're annoyed about, just ignore them. And that was the best thing that happened to me, too.
So if we were to take the elements that they talk about in the book about below the line, that it comes from a position of defensiveness, being right, or closed off, separateness, which one of those was the most dominant?
I was defensive, very defensive. It was like, well, I put it all in black and white. I did all the right things. And it was all about I, and I didn't stop to look at really the responses that I was getting from this person and realizing, boy, this was 6 months. There's no reason it should have taken 6 months. I should have seen it earlier on. And again, I was blaming myself. I was very defensive. It's like, well, why didn't I do that? And the answer is because I went down a different path.
So when you got on the other side of it, what was that like for you? What was your thinking?
The interesting part was after I got off, down and I said, okay, now I'm all right. I started making a list that tells me, how I want to pursue something like this in the future. If it takes 6 months of hard work, I'm probably missing something. And so from one of our other, podcasts that we've done, I remembered that we wrote down the pros and cons. And that's what I did on how I go about looking for a new client and adding a new client. And I saw a lot of cons in my list, like, I shouldn't be doing that. And read it over and over before I decided to cross it off. No, I'm not going to do that step anymore. And it got me back on track.
So the profile for an ideal client wasn't there.
Absolutely.
With this particular person.
Right. And as I look back at it, I knew that right from the beginning. But it was, I think, the thrill of trying to obtain her and I was more mesmerized by who I thought she was, and realized over the last 6 months, who I thought she was doesn't make any difference in who she really is. And I could see it in my emails that I was sort of giving up as that time span, came to the 6 months.
Kind of giving up in what way?
Not pursuing in the right way. It was just, basically, let me know where you are today. Are you ready to take it to the next step? But not putting any meat into it, because I think as I look back at those emails, I think I really realized that it was going to end with her either going off in another direction with somebody else or just not doing it at all. And so I wasn't putting any more energy into it either. But yet when I heard it from somebody else, that's when I really fell below the line. It was like, oh my gosh, I got to go back and see what I did wrong. It was my fault, and the only fault I can say is that I probably shouldn't have pursued her right from the beginning.
And on some instinctive level, you knew that.
Yep.
So this next section, this little extra nuance within this segment, where the authors talk about the, to me states that we have, and we all have them. And they're not linear, these states. It's not like a phases of teething going to, adult teeth, but little kid body. These are amorphous states that we kind of drift into and out. The key is noticing. All right. We live a lot of our lives unconsciously. That's the great thing. Our bodies are designed to allow us to do that. We don't have to remember to breathe. But the downside is some of the processes, particularly the thinking processes, are on an unconscious basis as well. So this next section, they talk about the difference between victim consciousness and being a victim, because there's a lot of talk in all sorts of coaching and psychological material and other approaches about the victim mentality. And this is a little different according to the authors. So they say that a victim consciousness is a choice. It may not be an entirely conscious choice, but it's a choice, whereas being a victim is not a choice. And the example they give is that a child abused by alcoholic parents were victims at the time of that abuse. But to the extent that the now adult child is making choices, being defensive, whatever phrases you want to use, in their present circumstances, blaming their present circumstances on that prior victimization, can be a form of victim consciousness, something that colors, their present reality and so on. So so when I started trying this on for myself, I was thinking, where do I have victim consciousness? And, it's there if you look for it. I'm in a profession where, I have to be an advocate for other people. I have to be strong. I have to do a lot of posturing and so on, whether I'm entirely feeling, a particular emotion or position at the time. But it doesn't mean we don't have the full, keyboard of other feelings and states going on at the same time. And with COVID, I see it entering into my thinking, darn it, I can't do this. It should be otherwise. I mean, that's, part a professional hazard on my part. We have to make it better or different for other people. But part of it is that victim consciousness. So any element of that you might see in just that last interaction you described?
Well, I think right from the beginning, I felt victimized by her, because of situations I've been in way back in my past. So something that I may have thought I wanted and I would go for, I would work so hard for it. And as I was working hard for it, I would hear the negativity coming through, but I would keep pushing, and I made myself a victim. And I didn't think of that over the last 6 months until, like I said, I went back and I decided this is a good time for me to see where all this falls. You know, where did I make a mistake? And when I realized that, okay, the mistake was most likely not trying to add her on at the same time when I went for it, I thought it was a good idea. But then I let myself get beaten up to some degree because I thought she was better than me. And that's how I used to be growing up. Everybody else was better than me. So if I went after something and pushed for it and it didn't happen, it was always going to be my fault.
You were lacking in some way.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And this time again, I don't think I've ever done a good review of something like this other than this time. And I hope to keep that up because it made me go back and realize, look at all these, things that I did right. Okay. And those are the things I need to concentrate on. And I think that's how I moved up over the line because I took myself out of that victim position.
What if the words right and wrong didn't exist?
Oh, that would be so much better.
How would it be different?
I guess the words right and wrong for me are a form of victimization. I remember growing up, I'm the youngest of three. I have two older brothers, and I was expected to, when company came over, to be dressed up, to sit there with my legs crossed and my hands, folded, and just be this polite little girl, where the two boys, if they got rambunctious, if they messed up their clothes, that was okay. And I kept hearing the words right and wrong. Well, honey, you're doing it right. Look how precious you are sitting there, and your brothers are doing it wrong. But the way they were doing it, they were getting away with it, even though it was called wrong. But if I would have gotten up and started playing and messed up my dress, and it had happened a couple of times, I was told I was wrong, and I got punished for it. And so
it was wrong with capital letters.
Yeah, and my whole life I've been waiting for the shoe to drop when I'm doing something, and it's only probably within the last 7 years that I catch myself when I'm doing that. If my husband, I think, looks at me wrong, it's like, and there's that word again, he looks at me and I think, what did I do? And it has nothing to do with what I did. And as soon as I can capture that, it's not about me. He just has a look on his face. But when my parents had that look on their face, it always was, Karen, what did you do?
With my mother, it was an almost imperceptible setting of her chin, her mouth. Only somebody with a magnifying glass would be able to notice just that micro movement. But I know my sisters and I were acutely attuned to it. Like, okay, yeah. Something's awry here.
And I think we all have that. And going through these exercises through the podcast has given me the strength to say, it's not always about me. Whereas in the past, it was, whether it was good or bad. or the way I perceived it to be good or bad. And now I give myself permission to do what I think is right, find the path that I want to follow, and if I detour and it doesn't work out, that's okay. What did I learn from that path? But prior to these podcasts, I didn't give myself that permission.
Yeah, and another element, if you can bring it back to the to me, so how does that relate specifically to this experience?
If I hadn't let it, I could have taken it to me as a learning experience. If I had taken it as a learning experience right from the beginning, that would have been a better opportunity for me. But instead...
And that would have been above the line.
That would have been above the line, right. I could have stayed above the line. Okay, this is an opportunity, envision it, and whatever you need to do, follow whatever your steps are, and go forward, and agree that there is no right or wrong. What's going to happen is going to happen, and learn from it and continue going forward. But instead, I didn't, and I realized again when I started reading, these emails, that I was playing the victim, and because I didn't know how to address it, I was using very simple phrases like, so are you ready to go to the next step? Because I was afraid to hear her say no. So, I just one-liner, and most of those she didn't even respond to. And that should have been another clue to me. Okay, what are you learning here?
And if that had happened earlier, what are your thoughts?
I think I would have stopped pursuing and, taken some of that stress off of myself, because I know it was affecting me when I was talking to other new clients. Because I've been told, since this happened the other day, one of my other new clients has said to me, I guess COVID really, had you stressed out. There must be something good going on right now for you. And I thought, wow. And I knew exactly what she was relating to.
That palpable.
Yeah.
So what was the stress?
The stress was that I just felt that, I had to have this podcaster. It was just so important. And, I was going to get her any way that I could. And I was putting all my energy into it. And I was depleting myself.
And possibly your worth on the line?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I probably felt the line with other people because this was hanging over me. Because I really thought, if this is a win, wow, it's going to take me to the next level. And yet I never thought about what that next level was.
It just wasn't what is right now.
Yep.
So anchoring back to this material, this payoff we get, there's always a question we can ask ourselves, what does this cost me? So you kind of alluded to some of those things. And then the other question is, what's the payoff when I'm in this state of mind, the state of consciousness? And that can be a feeling of being separate, separateness, being at less risk on some levels. There can be drama. We've all seen that where a drama ensues, and for some people that seems to be an element they seek, or seeking and getting empathy, or leaving it to others and being rescued. It's just, something to be thinking about. Say, what does this cost me? What do I get from it? What keeps me in this state of consciousness?
Yeah, and I think if I had allowed myself to be more conscious of what I was doing, not necessarily what the other person was doing, but what I was doing, I think I could have stayed above the line, because I would have been able to see, hey, I'm starting to get pulled down. Why am I getting pulled down? I could go back and review it and move myself back up, because there probably isn't anyone in this world, as much as I love my kids and love my husband, that I shouldn't allow them to manipulate me to fall below the line. Nobody is worth that.
Is it possible for somebody to manipulate you below the line?
Oh, if you make yourself the victim.
Okay.
And if you're not conscious of what you're doing, and again, that's how I, feel I was so much of my life, that I was trying to please so many people that I was going through steps, not even consciously, just doing what I thought made other people happy. And when I wasn't getting any kind of reward from it, I couldn't understand why I was feeling so terrible.
Well, and you have to try harder, because you're not there yet.
Yeah, exactly. And the trying harder made me even feel more miserable, until I, my oldest brother Gary, told me something a number of years ago. It happened to be the week of Christmas. I had the week off from work and no family around, and I was feeling really sorry for myself that day. And I wrote something on Facebook about, it's not fair. I don't have family here, and none of my friends, want to include us, and just like cried my heart out on Facebook. He read it, and he called me up, and he said, "Stop wallowing in your pity. The sooner you do that, the happier you will be. If somebody invited you over for the holidays, do you think that's really going to make you happy?" And my first reaction was, well, of course. He goes, maybe. He said, what if it's, a business acquaintance who you really don't care for? Are you really going to have a good time being with them for the holidays? And I thought about it, and I said, probably not. And he said, so just stop this. Make your own fun. You can only make yourself happy. And, that was the beginning of me starting to think about, oh, you're right. I can't depend on somebody else to make me laugh and smile and feel comfortable with myself. I've got to do it myself.
And what's the common denominator with all of these things?
Being conscious of where you are and what you're doing, and, not letting the outside forces pull you down, and knowing that even if they do, there's a way to crawl back up.
And if I can tag on to that, the idea that it's all occurring in our head. That's where 98% of it is occurring.
Right.
Yes, there are external circumstances, but how we relate is the only thing we have control over.
Well, and when he pointed out that post, which I took off, but I have saved, and every once in a while I'll go back to it when I want to have a pity party, and I'll read it and I laugh at it, which I think is, that's my solution. But, nobody ever told me for me to be happy, I had to do it myself. Because I grew up in a home where it was, be nice to your parents, make them happy, whether it means help with the laundry, do the dishes, whatever. Okay, do your chores and don't cry about it. And, make your brothers happy. because you're the little sister. So, find something to do that will make them smile, and then you'll smile. And when I went to get married the first time, my grandmother sat down with me and she said, I just want you to know, to have a happy marriage, you have to do everything to make your husband happy. And that's what I lived with for so many years. And it was like, I was worn out. Because if I made somebody a cake and thinking that was going to make them happy and it didn't, then I started doubting myself. What's wrong with me? Why did I make them the cake? Or if I bought somebody a card and sent them to them and, they didn't respond. Oh, did I send them the wrong card?
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is that it's reminding me that we have cultural norms that are along those lines that reinforce the idea that their idea of where their happiness would originate would be how well you reflected on them or not. Right. And then the reason we gravitate towards those states of being is because they feel so normal. I mean, we live it for so long. I mean, this is how you do it.
Right.
So just kind of pulling it around to these specific categories of our existence that the authors talk about, how it shows up when we're talking about money. The to me state of consciousness basically is in the neighborhood of never enough, and my value is attached to it. I'm either high value because I have a lot of it, or I'm low value because I don't. Unless you're real counterculture, and then it might be the other way. Time would be not enough of the right kind, so that gets into work-life balance. And even when you have time off, like with COVID, obviously for a lot of people, that was the wrong kind of being off because their livelihood was at risk, right. Or maybe a sense of overwhelm. They talk about happiness as a fleeting concept. It's you're only as good as your last ice cream cone, and it depends on those external circumstances, not something that you can create for yourself in a moment. And discipline, this one I found kind of intriguing, that things are hard, and your life is filled with shoulds and the need to be good, everything you were just describing today. And then purpose, I never really thought of it in the context of purpose, and to me mindset is basically saying I'm filling roles. I don't really have a sense of my own purpose. I should, but I don't. So something's wrong, something's lacking here. And then finally, that leadership, even for leading our own, thoughts and so on, is a burden. It's something we have to do, and it's an obligation, not necessarily one we would choose for ourselves. And others let us down because they don't meet our expectations.
Right.
So if you wanted to take away something from the discussion today that might apply in your life, what might that be going forward?
Well, to keep working on not being a victim, being conscious of where my thoughts are, and maybe making that checklist, when I get to that point of, it's all about me. Well, let's put the pros and cons down, how much is me and how much is not me. And like you said, how much are the circumstances that I can't change? And I think that's something that I truly need to keep working on so that I don't fall into, my old ways of pleasing everybody and feeling depleted.
Yeah, and also to be conscious of the fact that it's not a place that we arrive and get to stay. It's something that we're constantly, it's just like breathing. It's something we have to maintain. It's a lifetime skill that we have to remind ourselves to do. Unlike breathing, it isn't automatic. Well, thank you, my guinea pig.
I love being the guinea pig. I tell you, as I...
Well, you do a good job.
Well, I mentioned to another person who I was podcasting with yesterday that this means so much to me every 2 weeks, and I hope our listeners are getting something out of it, because it makes you look at, your life, and it allows us to see that, we're not the only ones thinking in a certain way. Okay. I'm not the only one who makes myself a victim. I still want to make people happy, but I want to make people happy through my happiness. And I think, if we can, delve more inside ourselves and be honest, as somebody told me, just be the authentic Karen that you are, and, you won't carry so much on your shoulders. So that is my goal.
And my goal, just to add, one last little add-on, is just so we see those forks in the roads. We can continue to take the fork we've always taken, or there might be another one that we just never noticed before that's there, and we may want to explore that. Can still go back to the old one if we want, but at least we have another one that's open up to us. So for me, that's the fun part.
Well,
so
just keep
again,
those breadcrumbs on the ground so you can follow your way back.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Sounds
we'll
good.
talk to you again in 2 weeks. Have a great day.
Sounds good, Karen. Thanks. Bye-bye.